Welcome everybody to another episode with Astrid, your APD dietitian with T, no C. And I'm having today the pleasure to speak with Ted Naiman. And I am super excited to have him on again because we're going to be talking about his new released book called Satiety Per Calorie. And that is going to be very interesting to talk about in addition to the PE diet. So we're going to go overview of some general questions and then a segment of true and false, a segment of overrated, underrated, and lastly, a segment that I knew created on statement, fill in the blank, and what Ted Naiman will say about it. Hello.
Ooh, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you, my Ted?
Spectacular, thank you.
Very excited to have you on. I can't believe that you have a new book released. I'm so pumped to read it. I went through all that information that you put in there. Like it's just so dense and packed with a lot of value, very practical advice and very visual information. Like I loved all the images and all of those things. So you've been talking about protein leverage for a long time and nutrient density. What inspired you to write Satiety Per Calorie now? And how does that expand on your earlier book, The PE Diet?
Oh, okay. When I first learned about protein leverage and what a big deal it was, and did all this research into it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is probably the single most important factor when it comes to ad lib caloric reduction. And I was like, the world has to know, so I have to write this book. This PE diet, like this is just the cornerstone, the end all be all of like ad lib caloric intake. So I was super inspired, wrote the PE diet. And then immediately afterwards, I was like, there are people out there who don't increase their protein percent, but get like killer results. And how are they doing it? Oh, look at energy density, look at fiber, look at hedonics, look at these other factors. They're not quite as important on their own, any one of them, as protein percent of calories. But when you lump them all together, it's just as big a deal, and the sum is like more than the whole of its parts. So you really have to zoom out and look at all of them together. And so I just immediately in my mind started writing Satiety Per Calorie right after the PE diet came out, and that was 5 years ago. So it actually took me forever to write Satiety Per Calorie. It was like 5 years, probably definitely over 3,000 hours. The book is huge. It's just like it's too long. It's too many words. It's too many pictures. It's too many pages. Don't buy it. Don't read it. It's terrible.
Now, what's changed in your thinking and maybe in your experience, and what have you put into this new book compared to when you wrote the PE diet initially?
Not really. No. Okay. So like the PE diet, I was just looking at this one factor, and what a big deal it was. And I actually stand by everything in there. That's totally correct. It's totally accurate. It's totally appropriate. It's just that this zooms out a little bit more and shows it in the scope of everything else, and really kind of explains any phenomenon you would see in all of nutrition. Just looking at protein percent doesn't really explain it all. I mean, like, there are a bunch of vegans out there who aren't eating a higher protein percent than the standard American diet, but their outcomes are much better. And it's because they're paying attention to these other factors, probably not intentionally, but unintentionally with their food choices. And so that's kind of the difference. And now I'm a little bit more holistic. I'm a little bit more big picture. I'm a little bit more zoomed out. And so I would say I was just macro focused in on protein percent. And now I've zoomed back out and I'm at the, 50,000 foot view, and you can actually see the whole landscape. And I think it's an improvement. I think it's just like it's like, it's like in AI where you take a photo and you zoom it out and you get everything filled in around it. It's kind of like one of those. So I think that's what's going on here.
That's awesome. Now, you've discussed plenty of times obesity and insulin resistance. Has now your perspective evolved or changed the satiety per calorie into your clinical work?
I mean, I would say that I'm using these other levers in addition to protein in my clinical work, but I haven't really changed my stance on over fatness, personal fat threshold, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome. Except for the fact that I'm even more intentional when I say that people are over fat rather than clinically obese. I'm not looking at markers such as, BMI nearly as much anymore. And I have tons of patients from Southeast Asia, for example, and they might have a normal BMI, 19 to 24, something in the normal range, but they're severely over fat. They might be horribly diabetic, uncontrolled hyperglycemia, just hideous insulin resistance at a normal BMI. So I have more and more people who aren't obese by BMI, who are severely over fat. And so now I'm just calling it what it is. It's just like the first word in satiety per calorie is over fatness. And that's a term that I'm really trying to introduce everyone to because it's a much more important concept than a BMI. And are you overweight or not? Are you obese or not? No, it's like internal overfatness at any BMI is a much, much, much more important concept. So I really hammer that home, I think, in this book.
Let me ask you something. Is for you the same under over fat compared to the word under muscles? For you, is it the same, or would you see it with a different lens?
I would say they're on the same spectrum. So you're constantly trying to get the highest lean mass and lowest fat mass at the same time. And most of my over fat people would be less over fat if they had more muscle, which is basically another place to dispose of glucose and store energy. If you took someone who is, over fat and diabetic and instantly gave them 10x muscle, their diabetes would just collapse because now they have a place to store a whole bunch of extra calories, intramuscular triglycerides and glucose, basically glycogen. So you can technically say they're simultaneously over fat and under muscled. Sure. And I think that's another reason why it's more important to look at overfatness as its own entity rather than overweight or obese. Since if you're a, you know, natural bodybuilder, you could have a BMI of 30 and single digit body fat, amazing insulin sensitivity, and you're not over fat. So yeah, I mean, to me, they're on a continuum, on a sort of on a spectrum.
What do you think is the biggest blind spot, the biggest confusion when we think about the calories in, calories out debate with the versus the hormone issues? How do you think the satiety per calorie concept can shift this conversation moving forward?
Oh, right, right, right. Well, kind of like it's not about how much you weigh or your BMI, it's about how over fat you are or under muscled you are. Same thing with calories. Like, I don't care how many calories someone eats. I do care which of those calories are being partitioned into lean mass and are supporting lean mass, and which ones are ending up having to be stored in fat mass and only leaving your body if you exercise them off. So for me, it's not about calories at all. It's more about storable energy calories that you had to eat in excess to get enough protein, if you know what I mean. So it's more about where those calories are going, what those calories are doing. Protein supporting your lean mass, carbs and fat, refined carbs and refined fats are supporting your fat mass. And so to me, that's more important than just overall calories. And while the word calorie is in the title of satiety per calorie, and that pisses a lot of people off, I kind of explain in the book how I'm not really worried about calories as much as I am carbon atoms with high energy density bonds that have to go someplace in your body. If it's protein, it's usually mostly ending up in your lean mass or being oxidized. Uh, if it's carbon fat, that has to be pretty much stored where it might be released and burned later if you're exercising enough. So that's kind of the difference to me. It's about storable carbon atoms that are only leaving your body when you exhale them after you've oxidized them in your mitochondria because you burned enough energy with your activity level. So it's more about that carbon balance than calories per se, which makes you ask, like, why did I put calories in the title? That's a good question. I don't want to be a calorie denialist. I totally get the people, a lot of people in the low carb world are like, calories aren't even real. It's just a construct of, heat, blah, blah, blah. I totally get that. That resonates with me. I talk about it in the book. You really have to think about it in terms of carbons that are going somewhere. Where are they going? How can you get them out of your body again? If they're carbs and fats, you're basically storing them. All these carbons you ingest pretty much have just four fates. They're being excreted if they're from fiber. That's, no problem. They're mostly headed towards lean mass if it's protein. If they're carbs, they could be just replenishing muscle glycogen if you burned a ton of that, right? But if it's fat, it's going straight to your fat cells, and it's only leaving your body after you exhale it, after you pull those calories from energy demand, pretty much.
So from what I hear is that calories do matter, but obviously it's more the partitioning on where these nutrients are going in the first place, and whether they're being utilized correctly or stored
Hmm.
appropriately.
Yep, exactly.
I think we've been using the satiety per calorie a lot, but we haven't defined it yet. So let's define satiety per calorie in practical terms. How do people use this concept without getting stuck on, I don't know, on math and fear and what is satiety, what's calorie, what's the deal with this?
So really, the satiety part's easy. Everybody eats to satiety, full stop. Pretty much every meal, every day, everybody over time. Statistically speaking, everyone just eats to satiety, and that's when they stop eating all day long, all day, every day. Now, there are some people, like, if you're doing your show prep, for example, you're definitely white knuckling through a couple weeks of very low calories, and you're not eating to satiety at all, not even close. But statistically speaking, over the course of your life, most of the time you eat to satiety of whatever foods you've got in front of you, and that's what people are doing. So it's not so much about satiety. That's kind of a given. That's kind of a constant. That's just there. You're eating to satiety. Period. The question is, how many calories came along for the ride that you're going to have to store in your body? If you're eating really low satiety per calorie foods, if you're eating potato chips and you're eating to satiety, because there's no protein, no fiber, they're totally dehydrated, no water. It's like the lightest form. It's just starch and oil. It's just a super light form of just pure storable energy calories. To get enough satiety from potato chips, you're overeating calories like crazy. So potato chip is food with very low satiety per calorie. You can eat them to satiety. I could eat potato chips to satiety, but I'm eating that family size bag, right? It is a lot of potato chips. It is not cool. So it's not so much about the satiety part. That part is very easy. It's really about how many unintended calories did you eat along the way, and specifically how many calories that you're going to have to store in your fat cells or in your muscle. If it's glycogen and you have tons of muscle and you're expending it all the time, that's awesome. But those calories have to go somewhere. So where are they going? Do you have room to store them or not? Maybe you don't because you're under muscled. You have no place to put glycogen. You're over fat. You have no place to put fat. These calories should just circulate in your bloodstream. That's giving you high fasting triglycerides, high fasting glucose, high fasting insulin. You've got metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance. You're on your way to diabetes. And if you just keep eating these potato chips, you have to overeat calories over and over and over again, and that's not a good trajectory. So that's why food choice and satiety per calorie is probably the most important concept when it comes to diet. Period.
I agree with you. It's so important to eat things that satiate you and have adequate amount of volume so you can actually feel fuller when you finish your meal and experience what the stretch of the stomach is going to send that signal to your brain. Okay, there's actual food. I think we're good. However, when we eat things that are pretty much very, very small amount in volume, and they in that small volume you can pack so many calories, especially when it comes to added fried oil, things like that can increase the caloric value of the food. It just makes it really difficult to feel full unless you eat a family size meal or something like that. Like same with cereals. Like I couldn't have a cereal for breakfast. Like I need to have one box, and I think I still, after a box of eating the entire thing, I'm still hungry and I still want to eat more. And in just one box, you literally can get 2,000, 3,000 calories in one go, and you're not feel full at all.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely, exactly. And I just go on a rant about this in the book. There's like pretty much two jobs you have every day. Number one is to eat enough protein to not be hungry, because everyone's going to eat until they get enough protein, full stop. So you want to target that protein, eat that protein up front. You want to eat that protein earlier in the day, earlier in the meal. You're just trying to achieve this protein goal. The second thing you have to do is eat a certain weight and volume of food. I mean, you're going to eat 1.5 to 2 kilograms of food every day on average, pretty much no matter how many calories are in it. You're eating, 3 to 4 pounds of food. You're just going to do that. Now, if you're doing that with potato chips, that is like 10,000 calories. It's just absolutely extreme. That little 8-ounce bag of potato chips is almost 2,000 calories. It's like definitely your whole basal metabolic rate. So, you want protein and you want weight and volume. The weight is from water, the volume is from fiber. You can get both from fruits and vegetables. So, I might eat, this giant vat of, you know, low carb and low fat Greek yogurt, like a Oikos Triple Zero or a Tuga or one of these things. And it's, 2 pounds of food, and it's only 400 calories, and it's 80, 90 grams of protein. It's such a win. It's such a cheat code. Or if I'm eating like a skilled chicken breast or fish or something like that, then I'm going to eat, a bunch of carrots and apples and celery and some sort of thing like that. There's so much weight and volume. You have to eat 18 pounds of carrots to get 2,000 calories. That's crazy. That's never going to happen. So, yeah, so absolutely, you need this weight and volume, you need this protein. And in the book, I have these like graphs where it's like, okay, here's how you get your protein and your low energy density foods, your weight and volume. Um, and it's just like kind of a cheat code, honestly, to just being full and eating to satiety and eating less calories auto magically.
I like the idea of eating for satiety, but I think we need to also consider the point of satisfaction. I like to think about these two concepts that they somehow, not always, but for the most part, they need to be aligned in order for you to enjoy what you're eating. So we just don't eat for the sake of eating. Sometimes we eat for pleasure, and sometimes we eat because food tastes good. So, what is your stance or your opinion in having this balance between eating for satiety, but also thinking about how much of what you're eating that is satiating you is also giving you some level of satisfaction? So then we can forget about these horrible cravings or feeling deprived because I just I'm just eating for the sake of being satiated, but I'm not really satisfied.
Yeah. That's a great question. And first of all, you talked about that some in your book, which you gave me a copy of. Thank you very much, which is excellent. And you actually discussed that. And that is like a really important concept. And in the book, we map it out as kind of like this arc, this sort of U-shaped curve. So like satiety score, you've got an Oreo would be a 0, like chocolate chip cookie, right? And celery would be a 100. You can't just live on either one. You have to be somewhere in the middle. The sweet spot is kind of right down the middle. The book talks about like the middle way in Buddhism. It's like this like central path. It's like you split the difference between these two extremes, neither of which is really going to help you. You have to have some enjoyment. You have to enjoy your food. It has to be tasty. It has to be good. Um, but you also can't just eat the Oreos. You know what I mean? So like for me, it's like, okay, the Haagen-Dazs ice cream is 10 out of 10 delicious, right? It's awesome. The super high protein ice cream I make myself, okay, it's maybe, a 6 or something like that. you can either eat a little bit of both or make something that's somewhere in between, a little bit more hedonic, but not all the way at a 10 out of 10. You know what I'm saying? So you have to find this balance between the two. Some people do it by just eating, 80, 90% healthy stuff and then 10 or 20% pure garbage. That's one way of doing it. Other people have to actually concoct something or come up with, like, buy the Halo Top in the grocery store or one of these ice creams. It's like a seven. It's you could actually get away with eating that pretty much whenever, and it's pretty good. It's not 10 out of 10 Haagen-Dazs. It's not like the poverty macros, 4 out of 10 water and protein powder, but it's like, it's somewhere in between. And so I think that's the answer, figuring out what in between is for you. Is that, 80-20? Is that 90-10? Is that Halo Top? And I think it's a little different for everyone. And I think there's all sorts of ways you can get there, but you have to kind of figure it out for yourself. For me, if I am going to have the 10 out of 10 things, it's a lot easier after I've had a lot of protein and fiber and water and weight and volume. So I always tend to eat those things last, like a dessert, not just last in a meal, but maybe even last in the day after I've already achieved these targets for protein and weight and volume. And then I can eat just, one donut and not the whole box. So I just wake up in the morning and start eating donuts. I'm eating that whole box of donuts. You know what I mean?
I agree with you so much. I think it is so important to perhaps explore the options for you that you can enjoy, but they're not going to be so hedonic that they will just invite you to continue eating. The problem that I see with the hyper palatable foods is that you could be full and you start eating those foods and you could still fit them in perfectly fine. So that's, to me, like, that's a big thing, because I am someone who eats a lot of vegetables. I can eat pretty much more than 2 pounds of vegetables in one meal. Like, I can fit it in perfectly. I think I have a black hole in my stomach. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I can eat a lot of food. And I could still fit in a full box of cereal after that, or a cake, or a full tub of ice cream, even if I'm full, because that's the problem with these very highly palatable foods. It's like it just completely eradicates the feeling of being full, and you are likely just to even surpass that uncomfortable sensation because of the taste. So I just find that it is a really important, and it's somehow a skill to develop when you actually get to find some foods that allow you to have that happy medium when you marry these two concepts. Okay, this is not just satiating, but it's also satisfaction, gives me satisfaction, and I am not needing to overeat on
Hmm.
this.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. That's absolutely right. And it might be a little different for everyone. Some people just can have those foods when they go out. Maybe they have a dessert, but if it's in their pantry, they're going to eat the whole thing. Um, Other people, have tons of just, like, I don't know, discipline or willpower, just inborn that they can just eat one and say no. But like for most people, it's somewhere in between. You have to figure out what works for you, and that might look different for everyone. But yeah, I think that honestly, I think a lot of people are exactly the same way. And that's probably how we're wired. I mean, hunter-gatherers, the second they come across some high energy density food that they usually don't get, they're going to binge eat it. And who's to say that's not exactly how what we're supposed to do? Because that got you alive through wintertime and famines and all these things. So I'm not even going to say that that's not totally normal, for like human behavior. I'm pretty sure hunter-gatherers would be binge eating the Krispy Kreme donuts, you know, if we brought them back here. So, like, I totally get that, and everyone has to figure out how to do that for themselves. But it's definitely going to be easier if you front load the protein, the weight, the volume, the fiber, the water, the veggies. If you find that food that's somewhere, the seven food that's somewhere in between for you, and have that around so you can just eat, have plenty of that, that's going to help.
I do have a question for you. Where does this satiety per calorie concept stand on the trendy diets, like let's say carnivore, keto, the plant-based diets? Can these still be high satiety per calorie depending on how they're structured?
Yeah, absolutely. So the nice thing about satiety per calorie is it's a layer, it's a filter you can put over any single diet religion if you want to. One of the nice thing about satiety per calorie is it can allow you to rise above all of the diet religions, all of the dogma and all of the, monofocused, rigid, dogmatic diet religions. You can kind of rise above all of that because you can see the big picture. Oh, this is why plant-based is effective. This is why carnivore is effective. This is why paleo is effective. And this is why low carb is effective. And I can actually pick and choose and kind of cobble them together any way I want. But you can also lay this filter over your pure carnivore diet. You know what I mean? I mean, the grocery store hot dog is a carnivore food, but it's 13% protein because of all the protein dilution from fat for economic reasons, making it cheaper to manufacture, higher profits, crazy high energy density, crazy high fat percentage, crazy low protein percentage, lots of saturated fat, which is not an essential macronutrient. So I talk all about it in the book, how satiety per calorie is a filter you can layer or view your diet religion through, no problem. If you're vegan, you could have like your deep fried falafel, a lot of oil, a lot of protein dilution, breading, oil, protein dilution, high energy density, lower in fiber, lower in water. Or you could eat, lentils, which have much higher protein percent, fiber, water, lower energy density, and you can look at your purely plant-based diet. It's like, oh, this is why I want to eat so much tofu or seitan or wheat gluten, because look at all the protein percent and the energy density and fiber. You could also apply this to pretty much any pattern or any diet religion and just layer this on top. Or you could read this book and understand it and be like, oh, hey, I actually don't have to be in the little silo where I only talk to carnivores on X and follow the plant people on Instagram. I could actually be sort of plant based and then eat, fish and seafood and things that have like a really high nutrient density and or somewhere in between. You know what I mean? So it's all about finding that middle path that takes a little bit of everything and it doesn't have to be dogmatic or focused on one thing. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it applies to pretty much any diet pattern whatsoever.
I totally agree with you. And I love for us to move into our segment of true and false, rapid fire Q&A. I'll say a statement and you let me know whether you feel it's true and false and explain your why. Ready?
I think so.
Okay. First one, calories still matter, but satiety matters more. True or false?
True. True, definitely. I like that.
Okay. Second one, if you're hungry all the time, your diet sucks, no matter how clean it looks. True or
So
false?
true. 100%. I love that. That was just the easy. That was a giveaway.
Okay. You can overeat on chicken breast if you try hard enough.
You can? Is that what you said?
You can. You can overeat on chicken breast if you try hard enough.
That is absolutely false.
What do you think that is?
Well, I think if you, I literally, so I haven't seen a study where any human or animal was literally fed 100% protein. There is no such study anywhere at all. It just doesn't exist. It probably wouldn't pass the review board, but we don't have a study like that. I think that it's entirely possible that on a 100% protein diet, pretty much any mammal would eventually die of energy starvation. I don't know that you could eat enough calories not to steadily lose fat mass, even if you had unlimited quantities. So until someone publishes such a study to prove me wrong, I'm going to say you physically couldn't gain fat on all the chicken breast you could possibly eat. And I would love for someone to prove me wrong. That would be awesome.
Well, if you're someone like me who could eat protein all day. Like I literally can eat a whole chicken breast myself, and I can eat more, and I can eat a kilo of meat. I don't know. I say there's something wrong with me, perhaps. I like eating a lot, and I can fit in a lot of protein. I don't know. It's just like a personal preference. I could probably gain weight just overeating protein. The main thing is that protein itself never comes like in foods. It's not isolated as just protein. It's a combination of different macros where protein is the major component of it, perhaps, when we think about meats or meats alternatives, chicken, fish. There is a big component of protein, but there are other macros as well making that food in other percentages. For example, high fat meat is not just protein, it comes with fat and a small amount perhaps of carbohydrates, very, very minimal. And there's the other potential protein sources like the plant-based sources that will have more carbohydrates, very low fat, but also have a little bit of protein. And we are considering those protein sources. So if you overeat on those, you're still getting other macros in your meal beyond the protein. But if we thought about perhaps just whey protein powder, I don't think you could overdo it with that.
And I think I agree with you. Like, I think if you had, chicken breast with the skin on, oh yeah, you could overeat calories from that very easily. I was talking, like just skinless chicken breast, boiled skinless chicken breast with just the absolutely no fat at all, or whey powder, or insert, egg whites or any other just 99% protein here. But so I do agree with you. I guess the only question is like, how much fat would you have to put in there before then you could actually eat enough to get fatter on that?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I think calorie calorie surplus, regardless of whether it comes from protein, fats, carbohydrates, will eventually create a calorie surplus that may lead to weight gain. Now, from what I see in the research is that you could gain more weight, but perhaps not necessarily as much body fat as you could if the source of that surplus is mostly fat or an excess amount of sugar and carbohydrates compared to protein. So by the looks of it, even if you're on a calorie surplus coming from protein, you may gain some body fat, but there is likely to have a bless of gaining even a bit more lean body mass as well.
Um, question: do you think you could gain body fat steadily in a meaningful way on a 100% pure protein isolate diet?
I,
Because
do,
I'll give
I,
you $5 if you try it.
I don't know because I've never tried it.
Hmm.
I do see that there's been a few studies done perhaps in the past where I think they fed people up to 4 grams per kilogram of body weight with protein powder, and they didn't put any weight at all. And a good proportion of the outliers that gained some weight was more towards that lean body mass gain. So that study hasn't been replicated. I am not 100% sure. Like, it would be awesome to have a study just on creating an excessive surplus, let's say 20% surplus, made just by a solely protein diet. But I don't think no one would sign up for that study.
Yeah, I don't think we have ever, anyone's ever done anything like that. So we'll just have to wonder.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, let's move to the other one. Okay, protein shakes are cheating the system in a good way. True or false?
Hell yes. Yes, absolutely true. It's definitely a cheat code. I have a ton of people. who don't have, they're working two jobs, they've got kids, they do not have a lot of time to meal prep. And if they drink a protein shake, earlier in the day, before a meal, preload, breakfast replacement, meal replacement, whatever, they're literally just going to automatically eat several hundred calories less per day. And it's instant win. I don't care that it's not a whole food. I don't care if it's ultra processed. I don't care if there's artificial sweeteners. I don't care if there's like I'm not worried about the microplastics. I'm not worried about any of that. You know, we don't have a ward in the ICU for people who got too many artificial sweeteners and microplastics from their protein shakes. No, no, no. We've got like diabetics, who are having heart attacks. So I think that is a cheat code in a good way. Is it optimal? No. Is it perfect? No. But in the book, I talk about perfection does not exist. You need to just immediately eradicate that from your mind. Do not let perfect be the enemy of good. It's good. It's not perfect. Nothing's perfect. Do not aim for perfect. If you're trying to get everything to be perfect, you're just screwed. You'll never get there. It'll never happen. You'll just keep eating garbage. So do not, get in the way of people trying to do something that's better and something that's good, and even if it's not perfect. So I think it's cheat code in a good way, and I say go for it.
Yeah, I do think it is really good to use it, especially when you struggle a lot to get to your protein target. But I wouldn't replace everything just because it's easier or convenient. And that's where you're coming from. Like, it's not perfect, but it's definitely convenient and very useful as a tool when you're a bit far behind your protein targets.
Right, and compared to a lot of people's other options, it's so much better. Such an improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, a calorie from a steak isn't the same as a calorie from chips. True or false?
True.
Okay, why do you think that is?
It's all about that protein to energy ratio. So your steak is going to be, you know, at very lowest 30% protein, maybe as high as, 60, 70% protein. It's going to be supporting your lean mass. It will either help you build muscle, prevent you from breaking down muscle. It's going to give you higher satiety per calorie. The chips is unfortunately completely dehydrated, so it's very light, hardly any water, hardly any fiber, hardly any weight and volume, hardly any protein. It's just a crazy amount of starch and oil, all of which has to be stored and which you might burn off later. And like I said, that little 8-ounce bag of chips is, your whole basal metabolic rate. And I could eat that in 10 seconds, literally, and later be just as hungry as if I didn't even eat anything at all. It's pretty sad.
And more if you eat it mindlessly, like everyone does.
Hmm.
That you eat at, I don't know, 60 miles per hour. You didn't even think about it. You didn't even taste the food. You didn't even slow down. And once the chip is gone, like, did I even have it? Don't even realize you had it.
Yep. And the serving size is the whole freaking bag. Whatever, if it's family size bag, that's a serving. If it's little, you eat the chips that are there. That's how it works. It's
Yeah, that's
not
why.
not that great.
Yeah, that's why I encourage so much being so present and intentional when you do decide to eat something that is highly palatable, and probably like you're not necessarily eating something that is very satiating, because these soul foods that you want to enjoy, you want to really make sure they're worth it, and that every single calorie you're eating is actually going to be considered worth it because you enjoyed it. At least you were present, you chose it, you
Hmm.
you were intentional about it, versus just sweeping through it and you didn't even realize you had it. So it's like a wasted budget.
Absolutely. And you talked about that in your book as well. It was about mindfulness and like, eating this with intention and being like at least aware of what you're doing and which I think is really great. I totally love that. Really good point. Absolutely. 100%.
Okay, now fruit. It's basically nature's candy, but it still works in your satiety per calorie model. True or false?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And I used to be like, oh, fruit's just nothing but sugar, so it's pretty much bad. Until I realized that you just get this insane amount of weight and volume and satiety per calorie. There's a reason why, oranges did so well on that Susan Holt satiety study, from 30 years ago or however old it is now. Like there's a fruit is um horribly low in protein. So in the PE diet, I actually didn't really talk much about it. I talked about low sugar fruit, like peppers and avocados and olives and things that have like, more lower carb fruits because I was kind of monofocused on this protein thing. And I'm like, fruit has no protein, so it can't be that good. In study per calorie, I realized, oh, fruit is awesome on the weight and volume and fiber side. It's low in protein, and that's why you have to pair it with something that's high in protein. So it's basically like a side dish. Okay, so now I drink a protein shake, have an apple, brilliant. Uh, have some protein source, not that Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, piece of steak, chicken breast. Then I eat any kind of fruit I want, and it's this nice combination of the protein from the lean meat or whatever, and the fiber and water and weight and volume from the fruit goes together really nice. And like if you really look at, what humans are supposed to be eating, I mean, we did descend from frugivores, and probably the ultimate Homo sapien diet is like lean meat and fruit, like wild game and fruit is probably what aliens came to Earth from like another galaxy and just tried to figure out, oh, what are these things supposed to be eating just based on like hunter gatherers in the wild. It's probably a lot of lean meat and fruit is kind of like the ultimate human diet, probably. I mean, I'm being a little bit exaggerating there, but I do think that like that's not a bad template, and so fruit isn't entirely bad. Now from just a purely protein percent focus, fruit's bad, which is kind of why the PE diet was like it. I think it was great in terms of just bringing everyone's awareness to protein percentage, how important it is. But things like fruit got thrown under the bus, and when you zoom out and look at satiety per calorie and a more holistic picture, now all of a sudden things like fruit and whole grains fit in there because your air pop popcorn has a ton of volume and fiber, and your carrots, your apples, your oranges, all of these things are low in protein, so they're bad on the PE scale, but they're great when you add them to a protein and you're looking at your whole diet in terms of satiety per calorie. They're basically adding the weight and volume and fiber to the protein part that you get from lean meat or dairy.
I agree with you so much. And I think it is so important to add that combination, protein and fiber coming, regardless whether they're coming from, especially like whole grains, fruit, legumes, that could be a slightly higher in carbohydrates, of course, but they do have additional extra water, volume, nutrients, vitamins, minerals, lots of different things that are going to be a really great complement with that protein component. So it makes it
Mhm.
a perfect combination.
Absolutely.
Next one. Okay, you can eat ad libitum and lose weight as long as satiety per calorie is dialed in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hell yes. That is what the whole book's about. It's like choosing foods that let you just eat to society and let your whole body's and natural mechanisms tell you how much to eat. Basically, you choose the food and then your body tells you how much to eat. And if you pick the right foods, that is going to work. If I put a bunch of morbidly obese people on a desert island and all they've got is fish and salad, everyone's cruising right down to their ideal body weight and staying there. Food choice is everything. So what you eat determines how much you're going to eat. 100%.
Okay. You don't need to track macros if you understand food quality.
That's absolutely true. However, understanding food quality is a skill that nobody's born knowing. Nobody knows that on their own. You kind of have to track macros just to get that skill and to learn that. And I talk all about that in the book. If you start, looking at labels, tracking macros, realizing what the hell you're actually eating and what is actually in foods, then you learn this skill and you do get to the point where you don't have to track macros. But that's something you have to learn, and it takes time. You have to learn it the hard way. And tracking macros is a fairly good tool to get people up to speed and to get them to this place where you don't have to track macros. Now, it's true that, if you know enough about food to pick things that are high in protein and fiber and water and weight and volume and low in carbs and low in fat and blah, 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 you could probably get to a good place without ever tracking macros. Sure. But tracking macros is a nice tool in the toolbox to just educate yourself about what's in your food and get to this place where you don't have to track macros even faster.
I agree. And I think there are ways for you to get to lose weight without tracking macros, provided that you have that caloric awareness of food and you somehow have quantitative variables that you can use to give you some feedback whether you're in a calorie deficit or not, even if you're
Hmm.
tracking or not. I do believe like even if you eat high quality foods, they can still have calories. Like if you eat salmon and avocado and like these amazing high quality foods, you can easily still gain weight.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's not just about the quality per se, but also like quantity and quality will go hand in hand. But definitely when you shift your focus to more higher quality foods, but keeping the intention of choosing more satiety per calorie foods, where food volume and lower calorie options, higher protein are your first choice, you're definitely going to have much easier journey when it comes to losing weight without tracking.
Totally agree. Yeah, and a lot of people they're like, well, as long as it's healthy and it's paleo and it's Mediterranean, I can just eat as much as I want. Yeah, like nuts and dates and honey and you know bone marrow. There are all these like healthy, natural paleo whole foods that are so calorically dense and so much lower in satiety per calorie than you'd optimally want that you can absolutely gain weight eating them. And I totally agree with you 1,000,000%.
Now, most diet foods are secretly engineered to keep you hungry. True and false?
Uh, most diet foods are uh probably true. Like if I just went to the diet aisle in the grocery store and just looked at every cheap food that had something diet or some sort of 100 calorie snack pack or something. Yeah, that's probably true. I don't know if they're intentionally making it the lowest satiety per calorie they can, but they're intentionally maximizing profit. And anytime you do that, the protein percent is going to be lower, the refined carbs and fats are going to be higher, it's going to be cheaper to make, let's face it. So all of these foods are engineered for maximum profit for the shareholders, and unintentionally that does make them lower in protein, higher in cheap refined carbs and fats, and basically your seed oils and your sugar and your starch and your flour and your so yeah, probably true indirectly.
I do have a follow-up question now. You mentioned seed oils and sugar and things like that. How bad do you think is this seed oil thing? This is a big
So
debate, and like, what's wrong with them? Like, I want to hear from you. Like, what's your stance on seed oils?
everybody's right a little bit. Seed oils are bad because it's probably the single largest caloric contribution to the actual calories that created the obesity epidemic, right? So in the past 60 or 70 years, in 100 years, obesity went from 1% to 40%. In the past like 60 or 70 years, the seed oil consumption went up like crazy. And if you look at the foods that were dumped into the food supply that diluted out protein and basically just added calories. It's pretty much 50-50 or maybe even 60-40 fat versus carbs. The carbs are mostly refined carbs like flour and sugar. The fat is mostly industrial seed oils and other refined fats. So if you looked at just single categories of the calories that created the global obesity epidemic, seed oil would probably have to be number one. I think even the people who think seed oils are heart healthy would agree that if you actually looked at the single category that contributed the most physical calories to the global diabetes epidemic, it would probably be seed oils. So you basically seed oils are bad because they're cheap and they're subsidized and they're ubiquitous and they have this crazy shelf life and you can pour them on all sorts of food and make it more hyper palatable. And so yeah, seed oils are bad in that way. However, I do not believe that they're magically bad on some molecular level compared to tallow or saturated fat or lard or butter. I think if you could snap your fingers and lard or tallow or butter was just as cheap, just as widely available, just as ubiquitous, had the same shelf lives and the same ease with which you could make Doritos out of them, that you would not see any improvements in health. That would not be an upgrade at all. I do think those are more expensive to manufacture. So inherently, you're probably going to benefit somehow. Either those tools will be more expensive and people will buy less of them or something. But I don't think that the seed oils are magically bad on a molecular level because they oxidize and break all your mitochondria or something like that. I just haven't seen a signal for that in the medical literature. I mean, unfortunately, everything I read in the medical literature, if you just look at the whole body of evidence, seed oils are basically a little bit better than saturated fat. And they're also polyunsaturated are essential, and saturated fat's not. It's not an essential nutrient at all. So I'm gonna say they're bad because they're so cheap and so ubiquitous and just like kaboom, just envelop the whole food supply overnight. But they're not magically bad compared to like saturated fat.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with you on that. Okay. Glad that you clarify it. Now, the fewer ingredients on the label, the better your satiety score will be. True or false?
False. That's totally false. And honestly, so one thing I'm all about in satiety per calorie is not being fear-based. So I'm really tired of fear-based nonsense, right? There are so many, like I didn't eat lentils for years because I thought it had lectins and phytates and was going to kill me somehow because plants were trying to kill me, right? Like it turns out if you like cook this stuff, you're fine. It's awesome. And so I'm so over being afraid of a bunch of bullshit that doesn't really matter. And I'm really over the fear-based chemophobia and nonsense that's not really evidence-based. And I kind of go on a bit of a rant in the book about basically things that are possible versus optimal, things that are essential for certain groups of people, but not essential for everybody else. Like your person with celiac disease has to stay away from gluten. That does not mean that everybody else has to stay away from gluten. And I kind of go on a little bit of rant about that. And so, no, I'm not looking at labels for tiny little doses of stabilizers that could theoretically screw up your microbiome in a petri dish. I'm not afraid of artificial sweeteners. I'm not going to me, these are 1% things, even if they're real. And most of the research on these things is mixed. So even if it's real, it's a 1% thing. I'm looking at the 80% thing. I'm looking at the big rocks in the jar, the things that are going to really move the needle. You know what I mean? So no, I'm not into like scouring the label for any sort of impurities or dangerous chemicals or anything like that.
Oh man, that sounds like music to my ears. I love that. Protein is the closest thing we have to a fat loss hack.
Yep. Hell yeah. 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 Your whey powder is probably the single best supplement ever of all. Period. Full stop. Um,
Okay.
whatever your goal is, that's your best supplement. I don't even really consider it a supplement. But if you wanted to, if whey powder was in your mind a supplement, then that's the best one. Yep. Absolutely.
But protein overall, it doesn't have to necessarily be the protein powder. Like just thinking about protein itself, just making sure you're getting enough and you're having adequate amount of protein intake. That already on its own is going to have so many ramifications and benefits that indirectly or directly can lead to better or more efficient fat loss. So yes, I would agree with that.
Definitely. Yes. Put me down for yes on that.
There's no perfect macro ratio, only what keeps you full. True or false?
That is absolutely true. There's a pretty broad range of possible, and in fact, I talk about this in the book a lot. There's like clearly a too high and a too low for all of them. There's definitely a place where it's too high or too low for anything. But there's a pretty broad range in the middle that you can make it work. And trying to find the exact center or the exact, optimal is just kind of a waste of your time. Just make sure you're somewhere in this optimal-ish range, and you've got a lot of latitude to play around in. It does not have to be exact. It's absolutely not an exact thing. So in the book, I just break it down. Everything's got a too high, a too low, and then a nice broad middle range, and just make sure you're in there somewhere, and you can always tweak it. So yeah,
All right, let's move to a even more rapid fire, overrated, underrated. So the first one is cheat meals, overrated or underrated?
probably overrated. Most people's entire lives has been a cheat meal.
Okay, counting macros, over or underrated?
I think that's underrated because everyone should try it at least once to kind of get a feel for
Yep.
it.
Mm-hmm. Low fat diets.
I think they used to be overrated, and right now they're a little bit underrated.
Okay. What about low carb diets?
Uh, Probably overrated. In the past, they were underrated. Now they're overrated. Those two swapped.
Weighing your food.
Um, that I've actually never done it, so I'm gonna say it's properly rated. You're gonna be doing it as a bikini model. You're definitely gonna be like weighing your food at times, and as a role. I don't think anyone's overdoing it or underdoing it. That's probably it. Perfectly rated.
Yep. Satiety index chart from the 90s.
Still underrated, but the longest duration we have on any of those is 2 hours. So it was just like a teaser, right? This whole like Hava app thing with all the data we have now. This is like what that should have been all along, or that was just like a teaser, a little intro to the whole concept. And now we've really expanded the heck out of it. So, but those are still underrated. A lot of people haven't heard about it, so underrated.
Okay. High volume veggies for fat loss.
Underrated.
Eating 6 meals a day.
Uh, that's properly rated. Like, so the people who are doing that, I think bodybuilders who just they're saving their calories so low that they actually do need to eat protein frequently to not break down lean mass. So that's probably properly
Okay.
rated.
Tracking your steps versus tracking your food.
Um, oh, I like both of those. I like both of those a lot. So I don't know how to compare the ratio of the two.
Okay.
Um, yeah, they're both good, and I don't know, properly rated.
Okay. GLP-1 meds like Ozempic.
Those are well, now that 12% of Americans have used these drugs, they're properly rated.
Yep. Um, carnivore diet.
A little bit overrated right now.
Yep. Intermittent fasting.
Uh Overrated.
Yep. Protein bars.
Protein bars.
Protein
Um
bars.
Overrated.
Yep. Social
Yeah.
media nutrition advice.
Yours underrated.
All right. One more. Calories in, calories out as fat loss explanation. Overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
Okay. Now let's move to the last bit, which is filling the blank. This is a new section. Basically, just not overthinking, just go with your gut, whatever you think. Okay. So the first one is the most underrated high satiety food is blank.
Carrots.
Okay. The biggest lie in the weight loss industry is
Oh wow. I'm failing. I probably calories in, calories out.
okay. Why is that?
Because it's really not that simple.
Okay.
So, a lot of people are just like expend more calories, and that works a little bit, and then you start compensating really bad. And then so if first of all, if you try to just eat less calories of the same food you're already eating, you're going to instantly fail because you're already eating two satiety of the foods you're choosing. So if I tell you to just eat half of as much of the same food, you're going to be hungry instantly. So trying to just eat less calories, expend more, that's really going to have diminishing returns and not going to get you to where you want to be. So probably that's why.
Okay. Okay. If someone always is always hungry on a diet, they need more
Protein, protein,
and fiber.
and fiber.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next one. You can usually spot a low satiety food by
Serving size, a serving weight in grams. It's like one serving is like 13 grams.
oh, oh man. I just see it and I'm already hungry. I
Hmm.
can't. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. Um, I wish more people understood that fat loss is actually about blank.
Satiety per calorie. Thank you very much.
Okay. If I could ban one food from every weight loss plan, it would be blank.
Ban a food from a weight loss plan? Oh gosh. I'm gonna go with skinny pop popcorn because it has like just a ton of oil and fat calories in it, like absurd amount. So the skinny pop is out.
Okay. I would say I probably would remove the one thing that makes you want to eat more.
Mm,
Even if it's like in a weight loss plan. Like if you give me peanut butter, I can't. Like I can
yeah.
easily have the full thing
Hmm.
in one go and still want to eat more. Like that's a one thing that I just can't have, even if it's amazing in a meal plan or whatever. I just can't have peanut butter that way.
This is like every bikini model I've ever talked to, nut butters of any kind. They have to keep it in the freezer, so they can only chip out a few flakes of it per use because otherwise they'll just eat the whole thing. I'm the same way. It's like I totally get that.
I have no issue having it in front of me because I just won't touch it. But the minute I start having and I just sort of like get a green light for it, it's just really hard to say, okay, I'm satiated and satisfied
Hmm.
from it. And I kind of like just because I like it, I just want to keep going. And it's not because of a scarcity or because I don't give myself permission. It's just like it's too good. I just can't have,
Hmm.
so it's really hard to stop. That's why.
Agree.
All right. The biggest nutrition advice I wish I could unhear is
I mean, I guess all foods in moderation. Like a lot of nutritionists that I work with, they're like, "Oh, you basically just eat whatever you want. Just like try to cut down the amounts. Just use smaller plates, smaller bowls, smaller." I go on a bit of a rant, like with the smaller plate thing in Satiety Per Calorie. I'm like, yeah, use the small plate for your low satiety per calorie foods, for your cheesecake at dessert, blah blah blah. But if it's a very high satiety per calorie food, you want the biggest freaking plate you can get. You want the salad bowl the size of your head. When you're having salad and 0 calorie dressing or a low calorie dressing or oil free dressing, you want the biggest freaking bowl you can get. If you're eating like a whole fish, you want like a freaking serving platter, and you're eating that whole thing. Like so just like make sure all your dishes and bowls and cups are small is half right. That applies to low satiety per calorie foods, but you want to do the exact opposite for your satiety per calorie foods. So that one makes me mad, and I went on this massive rant, an embarrassingly long rant in the book all about it.
oh man, I can't wait to read that one. Now, I have two more and I let you go. So, my go-to high satiety meal is
Non-fat Greek yogurt, definitely my number one food of all time. And then I put some sort of berries on it, raspberries, blueberries, whatever. So it's basically non-fat Greek yogurt raspberries. Boom. That's like a just a killer combination for me.
Okay, satiety per calorie is going to change the way we blank.
Eat.
That's awesome, Ted. This was so fun. Is any projects, anything coming up from you apart from the release of your book?
Well, I do have to pimp the Hava app. I don't know if you've been playing around with it. Send me the email you use to sign up for it so I can get you free lifetime access. But basically, you just snap pictures of everything you eat, and it tracks all your macros automatically. Gives you satiety per calorie. Gives you all these suggestions about how you can tweak it. What was good, what was bad, where you're at. You try to raise it a little bit. And it's just like there's this whole AI coach thing, but it's basically you can track your whole day's macros in about 10 seconds. There's a widget on your lock screen, and you just press a button, photograph everything you eat, and you get this whole macro tracking thing. It's pretty spectacular. So I have to pimp Hava. So check it out at hava.co, download the Hava app. It's pretty cool.
So what it does is basically helps you to track your macros without tracking macros.
You take pictures of your food, and AI basically guesses exactly what all the ingredient lists, all the ingredients, the estimated amounts, tracks all your macros. So you have all your macros just completely tracked, all your carbs and your fats and your calories and everything. But then also the satiety per calorie of each food. And then over time, you can kind of see, oh, if I eat a little more of this and a little less of that, I'd have a better ratio. And you're tracking your satiety per calorie, over time and where you're at and little ways of increasing it. And there's like a AI guidance in there that it's like, hey, this was awesome, this was awesome, this was awesome, this was a little less awesome, and you could have done that, and that would have been super awesome.
Okay,
And it's just like feedback.
that's awesome. I'm looking forward to look at that. Is Hava,
Hava.
HAVA.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right. I'm gonna look into it. I am so glad that we had this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you liked the questions. Some of them were a little bit tricky, but at the end we got there. Thank you so much, Ted. I'm going to leave this and share it with you so we can share it to the world, and I'll see you very soon.
Perfect. Hey, thank you so much. Great to talk to you.